Anna. Welcome back or welcome to my channel. Today's tutorial is for this really pretty crochet striped raglan top-down top. It's very, very simple. I feel like a lot of my recent tutorials have been a little bit more intricate and complex. Not that they've been super hard, but they just require a little bit more thinking. And this one is so simple. There's no sewing whatsoever, which is really, really nice. You literally just construct it kind of all in one go. And really the only math or thinking you have to do is at the very beginning, and then you just have to chain something once you get to the armpits, but then the rest of it is just a row repeat. So you can definitely just throw on a show or a movie and crochet without really having to pay too much attention to it, which I love. If you do make your own, definitely let me know by leaving a comment or sending me a picture on Instagram or TikTok or posting something and tagging me. Whatever, all my stuff is down below if you want to tag me or follow me there. And on that note, feel free to subscribe if you want to support my channel and continue seeing videos like this, and let me know what you want to see next. But without further ado, let's just get into the video. All right, so getting into it, you're gonna need yarn. You can use whatever yarn you'd like. Obviously, if you're using a larger yarn than me, you'll have to adjust your hook size, but you can also use as many different colors of yarn as you'd like. I'm gonna do 2, so just alternating stripes, but if you wanna do 3, 4, whatever number, you can do that, or if you just wanna do a solid color in just one yarn color, then that's fine too. But I'm going to just show you 2 colors alternating. So the yarn I'm using is the Rainbow 8x4 cotton yarn from Hobie, and this one's in the color 30, this one's in the color 2, and then here's the yarn information. And then I'm using a 2.5 millimeter hook with this. You'll need some scissors, and then you'll also need some sort of stitch marker. I'm just using safety pins, but you can use bobby pins, actual like crochet stitch markers, whatever, just anything to put into a stitch so you can mark it. And then you'll need a darning needle / yarn needle to weave in your ends. To start off, you're gonna grab your yarn and make a slip knot. So just make a slip knot however you make yours, and then insert your hook and tighten that down to your hook. And now we are going to be chaining a number to go around our neckline. So this is totally dependent on how wide you want your neckline and how kind of low you want it to sit. Just keep in mind that this is going to be connected in the round and you have to be able to get it on over your head. So that's really the only kind of thing to be mindful of. And you don't want it too wide because you want it to sit on your shoulders, obviously. So I'll show you what mine ends up looking like, but I'm gonna do 116 chains. And also I wanted to mention that you can start with whatever color you'd like. I like to start with my darker color of the 2, but that's just my preference. So use whatever color you'd like, but this is usually the color I like to start with and end with, just because I think the darker color on the outside looks better. So the only thing you have to keep in mind here is that you want to chain an even number. And I'm going to explain kind of the math of what we end up doing a little bit later, but you want this to be an even number, and as long as you do that, then you're good. And then again, I'll give you the length that I end up making mine, how many chains that is for me, and then what it actually looks like on a little bit later. So like I said, I'm going to be doing 116, and again, this is the neck opening that you're actually going to be putting your head through, and the smallest part of the top, essentially. So I'm assuming you know how to chain if you're watching this, but just wrap the yarn around your hook, pull up a loop. That's our first chain. That's 2, 3, 4. And I like to do these roughly, like slightly loose, nothing crazy, just so we're not fighting for our lives trying to put stitches into these. So you're just gonna do whatever even number you have to do to make this a comfortable neck opening for you. This is my 116 chains that I did, which if I measure it is roughly 20 inches or 51 centimeters. And just to give you a reference on me, my bust is about 34 inches and my waist is about 25 inches. So if you want to use that to find a ratio for yourself, then you can use that. But again, this was 116 chains. And now what you're going to want to do is untwist this chain. So my method is usually just get it flat here and then just slowly kind of work your way to the end so it's not twisted. And then we're going to be connecting to our very first chain. So grab this. See, I like kind of just twist it. You should hold on to the end and then just untwist it like this. I made that harder than I needed to. And then bring it around, and you're going to insert your hook back into your loop if you removed it. And then making sure it's not twisted, you're going to insert into that very first chain, and then grab your yarn and then pull through both loops on your hook to connect. And then we're going to be chaining 2. And now I'm going to pause and explain some things that we're doing so that this math can make sense. It's really not hard, so don't let that scare you. But basically, this is going to be our seam, right? And so if you've never done anything raglan before, we're basically going to be making like a rectangle shape. So it's not really rectangular right now. It's just, you know, a chain. It's a circle, whatever. But we are going to be adding increases in all 4 corners to give it a rectangular shape. And we're going to just be working out from here into like a larger rectangle with this hole in the middle. Hopefully that makes sense. But this seam in the back is always where we're going to be connecting and working from there. So this seam is in the center of your back when you're actually wearing this and your head's through here. This seam is running down the center, the middle of the back panel, or, you know, whatever. It's not really a panel, but, you know, kind of, we're going to be calling it a panel. Okay, I've got the iPad out, but don't let this scare you. I'm just trying to make this as simple and straightforward as possible. So let's just say like this is the chain right here. This is the seam. That again is going to be the center of your back when you're actually wearing it. And so I'm going to use my numbers, obviously, but you would just use whatever you use. So remember, we chained an even number. So my chain was 116. And as long as you have an even number, this should work for you. So when we're actually making each section, again, this is just, you know, a blob. We actually have to add increases and set, you know, whatever widths we want for each side of this rectangle. And so the way you're going to do this is based on kind of a formula of sorts. So this is going to be like our back panel, and then this is going to be our front panel, and the back panel is equal in width to the front panel. So each of these is going to be 0.3 times our chain number. So 0.3 times chain, and this is also going to be 0.3 times chain. And then for our side panels, which these are kind of like going over the shoulder / the sleeves, I guess, these are going to be each 0.2 times the chain. So if you add this up, this all comes out to like 100% of the chain. You have 0.3 plus 0.3 plus 0.2 plus 0.2, which is equal to 1. So this is like the mathiness of it, and this is how you're going to find the width of your panels. So for me, my chain is 116, and so 0.3 times 116 is 34.8, which we are going to round to 35. So you're going to round your numbers. So this is going to be, let's switch to another color. I feel like I'm getting way too serious about this, but this is 35, and then this one's also 35 because they're both just 0.3 times the chain. So we figured that number. Remember, you're just rounding like normal. If it's above 0.5 for your decimal, you round up, and if it's below, then you round down. And then for the side / shoulder, that is 0.2. So 0.2 times 116 is 23.2. 0.2 times 116 equals 23.2, which we're going to round down to 23. So each of these are going to be 23 like that. So just to reiterate, your 2 like shoulder parts right here should be equal, and then your back panel, which is split by the seam, is equal to the front panel. Hopefully that's not too confusing, but to check and make sure that everything is correct, you want to do this. You're going to just add everything up, all of your chains, and it should equal your original chain. So 35 plus 23 plus 35 again plus 23 is 116. And so that's how you know that everything's correct. If it's not, then you've probably done your math wrong, or maybe your chain isn't even. So just make sure you are rounding correctly. But this is what you should have. So kind of keep this as a reference, but you're not going to have to do this for like the rest of the top. It's just for this very beginning part, and the rest of it you can just kind of easily, mindlessly crochet, but it's really not that hard, I promise. It just seems kind of scary if you just like skip to this point in the video. But we are good now. So we have our numbers, our widths, and now we can actually start going. So we have our chain, and we're not going to switch colors yet. We're going to use, you know, the same color to make this technically first row, since this is just a chain. And how this is going to be working is, like I said earlier, we're doing increases in each corner. So 4 increases total. We're going to do this for every single round up until we connect at the armpits, but we don't have to worry about that yet. So for right now, we're going to be increasing every single round. And this first row is going to be kind of mapping out where those increases are. So here's the only kind of weird thing for this first row is that we're not starting like in a corner. So we're not going to be doing like 35 stitches in a row because we're starting in the middle, right? So we're going to be working half of that 35. And then we make an increase, and then we do our 23, and then we do our whole 35, and then we do our 23, and then we do the other half of the 35. So obviously 35 is an odd number. It can't evenly divide in 2. So 35 divided by 2 is 17.5. So the way that you're going to have to do this is just do 17 on one side and 18 on the other side to kind of like split that 35 in half. So obviously it's not going to be perfect, but I promise you will not notice. So it doesn't matter if you start with your 17 versus starting with your 18. It doesn't matter, but 17 plus 18 is going to equal that 35. So that's just what you're going to have to do again for this first row. It's just a little bit weird, but it's really not that bad. And so this first row, it's a little bit hard to tell like where you're going into, but I'm going to start with that very first hole. And again, might be hard to see, but this first hole directly under where we slip stitch and chained, that very first hole there. But as long as you count and you know all your stitches are right and you're counting each section properly, then you'll know exactly where to go and you won't have any extra stitches. So I'm going to start with my 17 of the half of my 35, and then I'll end with my 18. So I'm going to start by making 17 half double crochets. So to do that, you wrap your yarn around the hook. Again, I'm going to that very first opening directly under with a half double crochet. So yarn over and pull through all 3 loops on the hook. That's our first one. We're not counting our chains as stitches. So that's our first half double crochet. And then we're going to go into the next one directly next to it, make our second, and then I'm going to be doing 17 like I said. So that is my third, and I'm making 17. All right, I just made my 17th half double crochet. Remember, this is just half of our back panel measurement. Just round it down again because we had an odd number, so we couldn't do exactly half. But I did 17. And then we're going to be making like the area that we're going to be making our increases in. So to do this, you are going to chain 1 after you make that half number, which again for me was 17. You're just going to chain 1, and then you're not going to skip any stitches, but you're going to go into the next stitch, the very next, you know, neighboring stitch with a half double crochet, just like normal. So that chain 1 gap is going to be where we make our next increase on our next row. So we don't have to actually worry about anything right now. That's just kind of setting that space. And then I'm going to mark this with a stitch marker. Just put my stitch marker into that hole. You don't have to do this. Like you could just look at where, you know, the chain 1 gap is on your next row, but it helps at least for the first row or so. Until you kind of get used to it and where it is. But yeah, I like doing it on the first row so I don't forget it. And then at this point, we're now doing our side/shoulder panel. So we just did, you know, this half of the 35, and now we're going to do this 23, which is my number again, but that's arbitrary. But we're going to do this 0.2 times our chain. So for me, that's 23. So we're going to do this whole entire 23, and then we're going to do another increase spot and move on from there, but I'll show you that. So again, the stitch directly after that chain 1 gap we made is counting as our first of this side/shoulder panel. So that's 1, and I'm doing 23. So this is my second, my third, and I'm going up to 23. Okay, I made my 23rd, and just like we did over here, we're going to be making another chain 1 gap. So chain 1, and we're not skipping any stitches, but going into the next one with what's going to be the start of our front panel. So again, I'm going to add a stitch marker there and just mark that chain 1 gap so we don't miss it on our next row. And then now we're starting the entire front panel. So where we did just half of it here at the beginning, we're doing the entire thing. So I'm going to do the whole 35 now. So I just made my first one, and now I'm going to do 35. Okay, I just made my 35th stitch. We're going to chain 1 just like normal, go into that next stitch right there with our next half double crochet, and then I'll again mark this. And now I'm doing my other like sleeve shoulder panel section, and so that one for me is again 23. So I'm going to do the whole 23 starting with that one I just made, so that's 2, and I'm going to 23. I just made my 23rd, and you know the drill, chain 1 and go into that very next stitch with our next half double. Gonna mark that, and now we are coming back up to where we started. So then I'm gonna be finishing out that 35. So I did 17 here, so now I should have 18 stitches remaining. So just make sure you finish out that full panel so that you have your number correct. So I did my first, and I'm gonna be doing 18 total. Okay, I just did my 17th, and I have one more because remember we're doing 18, and as you can see, it's like not even a stitch. It'll always be weird on your first one since we aren't like counting our chains as stitches, but I'm just going to go into that very last like stitch there, make sure I get like all the loops, the 2 loops of my hook, and then make my 18th. So make sure that your numbers all line up properly, and then we're going to slip stitch to join into, and you want to make sure it's not twisted or anything, but slip stitch to join into that very first half double crochet. So go into the top of that first half double crochet we ever made, and then make a slip stitch. And now what we're going to be doing is changing colors for the first time. So there's a lot of different ways that people like to join, but the way that I do it, so feel free to do whatever you want to do, by the way, but the way I do it is just make a slip knot with my new color, and I like to leave a long tail so that when I'm weaving it in later, I don't have to worry about it, so I leave a pretty long tail there. And then with this, you know, blue that I'm switching from on my hook, I'm going to drop the blue, and then I'm going to put this white, my new color, on my hook, and then just pull that, tighten it down and pull it through the loop. And you'll have to kind of finagle it so that you might have to pull down the blue again to tighten it, but then we are going to turn our work, because the way that we're going to be working row to row is we just connected, and now we're going to be working back this way. So we're going to turn our work, so now we're working the direction we just came from basically. But you're going to want to keep in mind like which side is your inside versus your outside. So for me, I'm going to make this side over here my inside, and so that's where the kind of ugly strings are going to be. So you want to make sure from now on that all of your ugly strings and color changes and stuff happens on this side. So I'm kind of pulling it all over to here because you don't want that showing on the outside when you're actually wearing it. So I'm just pulling that all on this inside. And then you might just need to, again, pull stuff around, make sure it's all tight. Like I'm pulling on this blue string to tighten that down there, and then just also tighten down on the white. It's just kind of, you just kind of have to work with it until it works. But then I'm going to chain 2 with my new color, and now we're going to be working from here. So our first stitch is always going to be in that first stitch directly underneath where we are right now, so right there. And I'm going to work a half double crochet, and it's a little tight, especially because I slip stitched pretty tightly and we just did our color change. But you're going to go into there with your first half double crochet, and I'm struggling but trying to pull through that last loop. Okay, that's my first half double crochet, and then our next one is going to be in the very next stitch, and we're just going to be half double crocheting all the way down. I keep like doing my half double crochets way too tightly, so sorry, but then this is my next one. All right, so I just have been putting 1 half double crochet in every single stitch, and now that we've got to our first like increase spot, we're gonna make a half double crochet into that stitch that's right before, you know, the chain 1 space, just like normal. like that. So that's our first. And then I'm gonna move this stitch marker out because it's getting in the way. And then we're gonna put 1 half double crochet into the actual gap itself. So we're not working into a stitch, but into the gap itself. And then you're gonna chain 1 and you're gonna work another one into the same gap. So to recap, in that gap, we did 1 half double crochet into the gap itself, then a chain 1, and then another half double crochet into that same gap. And then if you want to add another stitch marker there, you can. They get in my way and annoy me, so I just kind of look out for them. But then you're going to work another half double crochet into that stitch right after the increased space. And now we're just doing this all the way around. So I'm going to work 1 half double crochet in every single stitch until we get back to this gap where, again, we're going to work in the stitch right before the gap, work 1 half double crochet into the gap, chain 1, and then another half double crochet into the gap, work into the stitch right after the gap. And you're going to do that in every single other chain 1 space that you have all the way until you get back to the start. So I'm just going to do that off camera and then I'll show you what we do once we get to the end. All right, now I'm going to show you how to end this off. So I did the same thing all around, and it's gonna get a little bit like slightly messy with all the different yarns you have going on, but it's just important you keep your ugly side to one side only the entire time. But yeah, I did my increases in every single hole, and I didn't mark mine because I just feel like it gets in the way, but feel free to keep marking it. And basically this is kind of what it's looking like. It's a little rough right now, and as we keep doing our increases, it'll kind of work itself out. But generally we have a little bit of a rectangle going on, and we're just going to keep increasing out. So at this point we're literally just doing the same thing until we reach where it kind of wraps around to our armpits. So that really is the repetition that you're going to do. I'll show you like a little bit more, but that's literally the rest of the top for right now at least. So for actually ending it, which is what I'm trying to show you, and then after that last stitch there, that is where I'm done. So I'm not going to be going to this last opening here, even though it kind of looks like you should, because we're going into that very first opening, and we're not counting these chains as a stitch. You just got to trust me, you're not going into that last like opening here. So it might look like you're leaving a little bit of gap, but if you do go into there, you're going to be accidentally increasing and adding more stitches than you should. So but yeah, hopefully you can kind of get a look on that. We're not going into this last opening here, and instead we're just going to slip stitch into the first half double crochet we made. So I'm just trying to insert my hook and get both of the loops of the top of that first half double like so, and then just make a slip stitch like that, and then we're going to turn like normal. And then remember, this side is our ugly side, so you can just like leave all your ugly stuff there. And then to change colors now, since we've already like attached our color, you don't have to do that reattaching slip stitch or slip knot stuff since it's already attached. So that's really nice. You can just kind of float your yarn up. So you'll just grab that blue from the other row and just pull that up. So it's literally just gonna go up a row, and then you're gonna put that on your hook, and we're dropping the white, and you can just tighten the white down a little. You can also just tighten it once we go back around because it's not really gonna be secure until we start crocheting with it again. So you don't have to worry too much about it, but just tighten down a little. And now we are working with our blue just like normal. So chain 2 with this new color, and then just like normal, you're going into that first kind of hard to reach opening directly under our chains. So right here where my nail is, I'm gonna go right into there like that. And that's gonna be our first double or half double crochet. So there's 1, and now you're just gonna work 1 in every single row. And at this point, everything is what we've already done. So I'm not gonna show you the same thing again, but I'll just explain it one more time. So every time you see one of these chain 1 gaps, which again, if you have a hard time finding them, feel free to just use your stitch marker. But this is my first one, and then my next one is here, next one's here, and then last one's there. So once you get to that opening, you're gonna make half double in the stitch right before the opening, and then in the actual opening itself, do a half double, a chain one, a half double again, and then you'll do another half double in the stitch right after that hole, and then do the same thing all the way until you get to the next hole, and then you just repeat. And then you follow the same exact instructions that I just showed you for closing off the end, where you make sure you're not adding an extra stitch. And you're just going to keep repeating this with color changes and doing the increases one in each corner until you have a length that goes, and I'll show you what I mean when I try it on, but basically it will be a big rectangle that once folded and put on, these two like armhole sections where we're making our increases can meet like on either side of your armpit. Again, that might not make sense, but I'll show you. But don't quote me on this, but I think for my size, I, on my last top, ended up doing 20 rows, including this first one. So right now I'm on my third row. I ended up doing 20. So hopefully that can give you a little bit better of an idea, but I'll give you the exact numbers and all of that once I do mine. But that's what we're doing for the next little while. Super, super simple once you get into this. Only thing I do want to mention again is just making sure your ugly side stays your ugly side and your clean side stays clean, because this will be what you actually see when you're wearing it. So you want to make sure you don't have any like ugly floating things. Like this is what the float looks like on the inside, and you don't want that on the outside, obviously. So that's something to note. And then also make sure you're not forgetting any increases. You should be doing 4 increases every single row. So I'm going to do that off camera and then I will get back to you. Okay, here with an update. This is what she's looking like. I ended up doing 21 rows, not 20, because I wanted to end on a navy row, and I had to do 21 to end on a navy row. So sorry that I lied and said 20. I meant 21. But this is kind of what it looks like when you put it on. Make sure you're putting it on with the seam in your back, and like don't accidentally put the seam on the side because it won't fit properly. But this is what it'll look like. And so it's a little bit like hard to, I mean, you can kind of see it's like just a little shrug. It's the top portion at the top. But next step is going to be kind of making a little bridge from here to here, right at the armpit, just to kind of make the full sleeve, which we aren't going to be continuing the sleeve since this is short sleeve. Like this is our sleeve, but if you were to make this long sleeve, which you could totally do, you would just keep working in the round in that. But I'm getting ahead of myself. We are going to be making bridges from here to here, and then once we have that bridge, then we're just going to work all the way around across the bridges. I'm really sticking to this analogy here, all the way down until you have whatever length you want. So again, it's super simple, but wanted to kind of like tell you what we're doing. So for me, and it's kind of hard to like estimate how long you need to do this, but for me, I do my like bridge 3 chains long. So I just add 3 chains in the middle to connect it there. So you can kind of guesstimate how much you need, but I think the best way to do it is just once we get to the point where we do that like chain, I would just do what you think is good. So maybe you could start with 3 like me, and then connect it to the other side and then actually put it on and see how it feels in your armpit, because it's possible that 3 is too tight, or maybe 3 is too loose and you've made this a little bit bigger so it goes down further and you don't need, you only need a couple chains or 1 chain or whatever. So yeah, I'm getting ahead of myself, but I wanted to show you kind of what I'm talking about when I talk about a bridge and things like that. So that's my update. Like I said, I just ended my 21st row. Well, I haven't officially ended it, but I just finished my last stitch, and then I'm going to do our usual slip stitch to end like that and turn just like normal. And then again, we are changing colors. So I'm going to pick up this white on the inside, kind of pull this blue down, just what we've been doing the whole time, and then chain 2, and then we're going to make our first half double crochet in that first stitch, and then we are just going to make half double crochets just like normal. Nothing is different now, but we're just going to change things up once we get to this first increase. We are not going to be doing our normal like increases, and that's where we're going to be making our bridge that I was talking about. So right now just do half double crochets until you get to that increase point, and I will be back. I made my stitch right before the hole just like normal, and now I'm going to make a stitch into that hole again just like normal, but where we would normally chain one and then do another stitch in the same hole. We are going to stop here, and then we're going to fold this over, because remember this is kind of how it's going to actually look when on, and then we're going to meet up to this other corner. And now is where you're going to be making whatever chain bridge you need. So, and again, try it on, make sure it fits comfortably and that you're not like choking your armpits, and that it's also not too loose. But like I said, I'm going to be doing 3, so I'm going to chain 3 like relatively loose chains like that. That was my 3, and then we're going to go to this corresponding gap space on the other part. So like it's folded like this, and this is the other, the next chain 1 gap. We are gonna wrap our yarn around our hook just like we're making a regular half double crochet, and we're gonna work a half double crochet into this chain 1 gap on the corresponding side. So insert your hook, pull up a loop, and then yarn over, pull through all 3 loops. If I can get it. There we go. So as you can see, we've kind of skipped this whole sleeve, and now we are just going to continue and pick up and go all the way around the back panel just with half double crochets. So my next stitch is going to be, actually I was in the wrong one, it's going to be in this next half double crochet right after the chain 1 gap. That's my next one, and then 1 in every remaining stitch until, you probably guessed, we get to our next increase, and we're going to be doing the same thing with a bridge just like we did. So I'll meet you back once I've half double crocheted all the way around to this corner. I made it to this corner here, and just like we did on the other side, I'm going to make my half double crochet into that chain 1 gap and then do my chain 3. So whatever bridge length you did on this side, you're going to do it over here. And then you're just going to do what we did on the other side, wrap your yarn around the hook, and then make a half double crochet into this chain 1 gap like that. And then you're going to make a half double crochet in this very next stitch right after the gap, and then all the way down. And we're going to be doing this until we meet back to where we started the row. I'm at the end, and just like normal, we are slip stitching into that first stitch, except I didn't get into the top. There we go. Do that, and then turn, grab your other color to do your chain 2. And then we are going to be doing just how we normally would, and at this point it's going to be exactly what we would normally do. I'll show you what we do once we get to this bridge. Actually, first off, I do want to say, like, you should try this on right now. I know I said it earlier, but I just want to make sure you try it on so that this fits you properly and isn't too small or too big, because that would be a shame to try it on at the very end and you've made this the wrong size. So try it on, but once you're good with that, we are literally just going to be doing half double crochets all the way around this circle, just going over this bridge, all the way down until you have a length that you like. So really nice that we're not doing like the full length. It's going to be a lot fewer stitches that you have to go around, so it'll work up a lot more quickly, which is great. But you're literally just going to do this all the way around. But I'll show you once we get to the bridge just how you're going to do that, but it's pretty self-explanatory and super, super simple. We're not doing any increases or anything, just 1 half double crochet into every stitch. I made it to the bridge, just did my last half double crochet into this last stitch before the bridge, and then we are going to make a half double crochet into every single chain. So I did 3 chains. You should be doing 3 half double crochets over the chain. So go into the first one. It's like we're on the back side here, so it's a little harder to tell where you're going, but even if you don't go into the exact correct place necessarily. It's fine as long as you aren't adding like an extra. So I've done 1, 2, and I'm just going to do the third into the last bit. So again, just make sure you're doing the right number of half double crochets and you'll be fine. And then from now on, you're just working into half double crochets, so it won't be an issue. And then our next one is going to be into the stitch right after our chains. And then that was the most complicated part of it. So super simple. And we're just going to keep doing half double crochets all the way around. So doing the same thing where, you know, we switch colors here and end our rows and start our rows the same way with alternating and turning like we have been doing, but we're not doing any increases and the area that we're going around is a lot smaller. So it'll work up a lot quicker. But yeah, you're going to just work all the way until this bridge, do the same thing that I just showed you over here, and then just keep working this up until you have a length that you'd like. And then I did mention this, but if you wanted to make this long sleeve, you could totally do that. You would just attach your yarn like this. I ended on a blue, so I would attach my yarn with white, and then I would attach it either here or here, somewhere in the armpit. And then you would just work alternating rows, just like we do here, but just around the sleeves until you have a sleeve length that you wanted. So totally optional. And I'm just doing short sleeve, but just wanted to let you know in case you wanted to do that. But I'm going to go finish this up off camera. Super, super simple. Probably going to watch a little show or something while I do this, but I will get back to you once the top is all done. All right, this is the length that I wanted to do. If you're curious, I ended up counting this first like blue row that we did underneath this bridge. I did 41 total rows. And again, I think it looks best when you end it on your darker color or end it on whatever color you started with for the neckline, just so it's all the same color for the perimeter, if that makes sense. But do whatever length you want, try it on, just keep going until you're happy with the length of it. And then we're almost completely done. So I'm just gonna finish off this row just like normal by slip stitching into this stitch. And then now we are gonna cut our yarn. So I'm gonna chain 1 and then grab my scissors and then cut my yarn. I like to actually leave a long tail. Cut your yarn and then pull your yarn through and tighten that down so it's secure there. And then you can also just cut. Again, I like cutting a long tail of this other color. And then now our next task is just going to be weaving in any ends, which there honestly are not many at all because we just carried over our color. So I just turned it inside out. So this is like the ugly side where we're just carrying our yarn over. So really you just have your ends at the very beginning up here and then your ends that we just finished off. But now you're just gonna grab your darning needle and weave these in. You want to make sure they're really secure, obviously, just like any crochet project, but weave them in, and at that point you are completely done. I think I am gonna try blocking this. I've gotten more into blocking my pieces and I feel like it helps a lot. This is cotton, which I feel like doesn't do quite as much with the blocking process, but I think I am gonna try blocking it, either wet blocking or steam blocking. I haven't really decided yet. I'm still a little bit of a beginner when it comes to blocking, but I will block this and then I will be completely done once I've woven in my ends. That is it. Thank you guys so much for watching and sticking around to the end. I hope that you like this. Again, I hope that it was as simple as it is, and I hope I did a good job of conveying that. But like I said earlier, let me know if you make your own. All my social stuff is down below, and don't forget to subscribe because it really helps me. Leave a comment, like the video, etc. You know the drill. Can't wait to see what you guys make from this video, and I can't wait to see you in my next video. Bye!